Hey everybody, welcome to the session, Embedding Customer Communications into Applications. I'm Joe Trelli, a Senior Solutions Architect with the Amazon Chime SDK. We're going to talk a little bit about the Amazon Chime SDK and how it could help you build real-time media, voice, video, and messaging into your apps. So here's the agenda. First, we're going to talk a little bit about actually enabling customer communications with the Amazon Chime SDK, and then some key benefits, the components or features within the service, an Amazon voice focused demo, which is pretty interesting, pretty cool. I think you'll like that. Telephony and messaging. So let's get started. At the core, more than ever, organizations need to be able to communicate with their customers. And it's not just with a phone call or not just with a text message. It's a lot of different modalities. It's being able to do video for maybe doing your taxes online. It's telehealth, communicating with your physician or your nurse. It's health and fitness, being able to do a remote class more than ever. This is important to your customers, your business. And we've worked with a lot of customers with the Amazon Chime SDK to do just that. So a lot of the in-person models, especially after 2020, have moved to hybrid models. And real-time communications is not an easy thing for many organizations. They don't necessarily have that specialized skill set in the company. So they have to either hire or train the folks they have. And even then, there's things like managing latency, managing quality, media fidelity. These are things that take time to learn and build into an application. We hear from a lot of customers that telephony and voice and video servers are some of the last things that are left in their data center, the last things to move to the cloud, because there's one or two people in the organization who know how it works, and it ends up not necessarily getting updated, not getting modernized, and not being able to benefit from the hooks into services like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's where the Amazon Chime SDK comes in, is we can handle the undifferentiated heavy lifting of this real-time communication stack. It's transparent to your customers. They don't even know that you're using the Amazon Chime SDK, and you're able to embed that into your existing app, in the existing workload that you have, like electronic health records in telehealth, right into that app that the physician is using. There's now voice and video and that communication. And even if you've never heard of the Amazon Chime SDK, you might already be using it. You can see Slack, Mindbody, and Cerner are some examples of customers that we have. Slack is a worldwide chat app. A lot of developers love to use Slack, and Slack is using over 1.5 billion minutes per month on the Amazon Chime SDK. So when you escalate from chatting back and forth via text to a video call, you're using the Amazon Chime SDK. Mindbody is a health and fitness and wellness customer, and they migrated from doing mostly in-person fitness classes last year to almost 100% classes online, virtual classes. So for example, a yoga studio, you have an instructor who's teaching now in their house to students remotely and needs to be able to see and hear them, and coach them through that class. And Cerner, I mentioned telehealth. Cerner is a large healthcare company, and they do electronic health records, among a lot of other things. During the pandemic, they decided they wanted to build voice and video right into their application, and they did, and have had a lot of great feedback on that. So we've talked at a high level about the Amazon Chime SDK, but let's talk about some of the key benefits. Number one, security and compliance. Security is our number one priority. You've probably heard that from other services at AWS, and it's really true. We have encryption at rest and in transit, and HIPAA eligibility is very important to customers like a Cerner who are in the healthcare space. We also have global reach. We're in 18 media regions, meaning we mix that media in a region that's closest to where that meeting is scheduled. So that helps with latency. We're on the AWS network. So keeping the latency low is important for the overall quality of the call. And we have the flexibility to customize the customer experience, and you have the flexibility to customize the customer experience. So like I mentioned, right into your own app. And one of the coolest things for me is the ability to integrate these voice and video services to other services at AWS, like Amazon Rekognition or Amazon Transcribe, or translating or comprehend to be able to get sentiment analysis for customers. That's the stuff that I find very cool. And in the past, it was a lot more difficult to be able to take those meetings, those communication tools, for lack of a better word, and bring them to other services like that and add intelligence to them. And lastly, on this slide, bringing your own authentication and authorization mechanisms. We work with customers, I work with customers all the time who have very specific requirements. Maybe they use Active Directory, maybe they use Cognito or some other service for having their customers authenticate into their apps. You can keep all that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the architecture and at a high level, how you could do that and how your developers could build that for you. So the Amazon Chime SDK has kind of features within features. It's three pillars, how I like to describe it. We have our media services, our phone services, and our messaging SDK. So our media services are kind of what we've been talking most about so far, which is like WebRTC video and embedding that into browsers or into your apps and back and forth communication with voice and video. Our phone integration consists of two parts. It's our voice connector offering, which is our SIP trunking, and our SIP media application, or SMA. And that's to be able to tie voice to Lambda, our serverless service at AWS. And then we have our messaging SDK, which allows you to build your own chat and messaging app. And it can stand alone from the rest of the Amazon Chime SDK, or it can be integrated. And there's a lot of benefits to that. Like you can see unlimited connections up to 100,000 members per channel. And there's a lot of other interesting things you could do with it. So we've talked about a lot of the key benefits of the Amazon Chime SDK. Another cool thing is the fact that we are working hard to bring science and innovation to this space. And something called Amazon Voice Focus is an example of that. I think we've all learned what it sounds like to hear a barking dog, a heavy typer on a keyboard, or other extraneous noises, air conditioners, going on a call, on a conference call or a video call, especially recently. So the models in the past to remove ambient other noises, extraneous noises on a call have been good, but not great. So what we sought to do was take it to the next level and use our AI/ML services and skills and our scientists here at AWS to build something new. And we call that the Amazon Voice Focus. We actually ended up winning first place in a challenge in 2020 in this space. So what I'd like to show you is the before and after. Actually, you're going to listen to the before and after with Voice Focus turned off and then Voice Focus turned on. So first, let me play the before.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello, hello. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Pretty noisy. You hear the heavy typer. And let's play the after.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hello, hello. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Obviously, the after sounds a little bit better. So, but we even want to take this a step further. We want to keep improving this. So we are now looking into and building upon something called personalized voice focus. So this takes our voice focus and identifies your voice versus someone else's voice. So you'll hear in this portion of the demo a podcast. In addition to the typing, you'll hear a podcast playing with another human voice and how voice focus interprets that versus how personalized voice focus interprets that. So let's get started here. We'll play the mixture audio first. This is without voice focus turned on.
Hello, this is Ritvik. I am typing and now I'm also playing a podcast in the background. I stopped typing. Podcast, I'm changing the volume.
It's almost like
I'm done now.
Okay, now play that same clip with voice focus turned on.
Hello, this is Ritvik. I am typing and now I'm also playing a podcast in the background. I stopped typing podcast and changing the volume.
It's almost like
and I'm done now.
And now personalized voice focus.
This is Ritvik. I am typing and now I'm also playing a podcast in the background. I stopped typing podcast and changing the volume and I'm done now.
So you can hear it takes away most of the podcast because it's identified that main speaker's voice. Some interesting use cases might be a call center where you have close proximity to other people, or home offices where maybe you're sharing the office with your spouse or someone else. This would be a good use case for that. So point being, we will continue to bring science and innovation to the space. That's what we do. I mentioned before we get into a little bit of the architecture of how it works. We're not going to get super deep today. Of course, if you have questions, you could always reach out to your fellow Amazon Chime Solutions architect. We're happy to help you through that. But at a high level, you have a server-side application and you have a client application. Client application meaning an app that either runs on like an iOS or Android device or runs in the web on Google Chrome or Firefox or Safari. And then on the server side, that's the app that you manage. Well, you manage both, but that's the app that talks to the Amazon Chime SDK. And that server side app is authenticated with the Amazon Chime SDK and will call to our APIs. So you're going to call a create meeting. We have this concept of a meeting. So you call the create meeting API and you get back a meeting ID. And now that meeting ID, this is kind of just in time. So when you need these resources, you can have them from your server-side app. So you get back that meeting, and then you're going to add attendees. So let's say you wanted to batch create 100 attendees. So you're going to call another API, create those attendees, and we give you join tokens for those attendees that then you'll pass to that client app or multiple client apps. And those clients then can join to one of those 18 media regions I mentioned before. So if you're in Europe, they'll want to join to a Europe meeting, and that's how they'll get in. So those client applications don't have to have authentication with AWS. You manage that authentication. That's what I was mentioning before. Maybe you have some specific thing like an Active Directory, or you're using Cognito or something else to manage the authentication. So that is handled on your side. So it's just that server side app that's there. And I mentioned before, you could have up to 250 participants in the meeting, and those are audio only. You can have up to 16 or extended to 25 video participants who have their videos on, and it's all mixed together, echo cancellation and voice processing. So let's talk for a minute about the phone integration. SIP phone integration. And for those who don't know, SIP is an acronym for Session Initiation Protocol. Been around for a bunch of years at this point. So we have the two components, right? We have the voice connector I mentioned before. That's our SIP trunking service. So you would connect things like a legacy phone system or a new phone system that's in the cloud to us to make and receive phone calls. And we have hooks into things like Kinesis video streams that allow you to do recording of calls, or if you wanted to process those calls, transcribe them, translate them, run comprehension through them using Amazon Comprehend, you could do that with our SIP trunking service, Voice Connector. And then we have the SIP Media app, SMA for short. And that is connecting voice to Lambda, our serverless service at AWS. So things like building your own IVR or phone tree, and tying that to other services. Maybe you want to build a database every time someone calls in. You can have it so when you press a touch tone, it does something. It runs a Lambda function. So there's all these connections that you can build with SMA. The possibilities are pretty wide. We've had a lot of interesting use cases come up from customers that we haven't even thought of, and that's the cool part about working with customers every day. That's what I like. And our messaging SDK. I talked a little bit about how it can stand alone or can be integrated with the rest of the Amazon Chime SDK. Here's a bunch of interesting features of it. I won't read through them all, but I would say the big takeaways here are the scale. So if you're building a chat or messaging app, being able to have up to 100,000 members in the channel, and be able to have controls and be able to redact messages. So for example, PII, so identifiable data, being able to remove that sort of in real time, send it over to either S3 or transcribe. And you're hearing a common theme of the integration with other services. I think that's really what kind of sets the Amazon Chime SDK apart. And that's what our customers have told us, is that the ability to take this previously sort of disconnected from other things and be able to bring it to other services, that you can take that real-time voice and video and do things to it and learn from it and innovate on it. That's kind of the crux of it. That's what I find interesting. Oh, and by the way, we do have emoji support. That seems to be the number one question from folks. So let's get building. We build in the open, so to speak. So we're on GitHub, and we have GitHub repos. We have demo applications for various different use cases. We have a serverless demo. Highly recommend having your developers or you run the serverless demo so that you can see how these things work. You can look at the source code, and you can take a look at how you might build it into your application and customize it for you. These are just examples. We have customers do all kinds of interesting things with them. And depending on the language, the actual coding language that your team likes to work in, we support various different, we have React components, but also if you use the AWS SDK, the languages that supports, we support. And also, if you're having trouble with this and you don't have the skill set to build something like this, of course, you could utilize AWS partners. And we have many AWS partners who are skilled with the Amazon Chime SDK and have helped some of our customers out who maybe didn't have the staff to do what they want to do. So I want to thank you for attending this session. Hopefully you learned something, and maybe you start thinking about how you could build real-time video or audio, voice, screen sharing, messaging into your own application and essentially help your customers. So if you did find this helpful, or even if you didn't, please fill out the survey. It does help us get data about how we can do better, what we're doing well. And yeah, thanks for watching. Take care.